So I realized that with me putting my mod on the workshop, and many people on the workshop have never actually built before in Gary's mod, so I need to make a tutorial on how to actually do anything. So I'll start with some basic stuff like using the fizz gun here. One important thing that some people don't know yet is that with the fizz gun, I'm going to actually build a mech in the background here, just so people know how to build one in real slow method here. But alright, so still my spray doesn't work, but I know north is this way. Actually no, north is this way. If you look on the map here, this way is west, so this way is north. I just learned that a few days ago, actually just checking sprays. Okay, back to our topic here. Many people, they don't know that with the fizz gun you can turn stuff, but more importantly, if you hold shift, you actually snap turn. Snap turn is very useful because you're going to need a lot of precision if you're building a mech or something like a vehicle that's, it requires precision. So for one thing, you want to build your mech, off the ground a bit so that it has a space for you to put the legs on it. So I'm going to put this here, hold shift and E so you position it like this. Next up, we're going to put legs on it. Alright, first off, you don't actually need this piece here that goes as the hip. I just put it there because it makes positioning the legs a bit easier. In fact, I'll use a bigger one than this. I'm just using the PHX props that come with Gary's mod here so that everybody can see what props these are and, don't have to download S props. Speaking of downloads, I have a lot of tools right here. The tools that you get, they come in a collection. That collection is actually linked at the top of the description for the workshop page of DakTek. I'll also link it in the description below. It's just the DakTek server collection. I just use it all for the building tools, and it comes with some maps too. You don't need to download the maps if you don't want to, but my server sometimes uses them. Alright. So we got the little hip piece here. It's a little big, but it'll work. Alright, let's place some pieces for the legs. The upper part of the legs, I'm going to have them be shorter than the lower parts. So these long pieces will be the lower parts there. Okay, next up, we're just going to angle this 45 degrees. Remember, hold shift and E. Actually, these need to be this way. We got to angle these pieces before we put them on, or else the precision tool that we're going to use next won't work right. Okay, so after we've angled them up, we get the tool that's called precision, and we put it onto move. Now, let's see, this seems to be everything we need. Now I'm going to set the push and pull amount to 50% up here. I have it already set, and rotate target should be like checked. And I have the rotation snap degrees at 5. I'm not going to really use it at the moment, but I just keep it at 5 because it allows you to move stuff with more precision. Alright, so as you can see, there's little lines and stuff on this. This is Smart Snap. Smart Snap is another add-on. You get it, you enable it, you press enable for all entities and all tools, and it actually gives you a little grid on each of the props that shows you where you can actually press at. It lets you actually build stuff with some precision. Alright, so we're going to get the middle piece right here at the middle, at the top part, and we're going to put that onto this part of the hip down here, and then we just do the same thing for the other side of it. Alright, next up we're going to get the leg here. We're going to get the back of this leg right here in this corner to this corner here. That way we've built some leg pieces. Alright, and here's where the pushing and pulling comes in. You just right click and it'll push it forward, or press R and it'll pull it back. I'm going to right click so it stays inward a bit. Alright, let's move this leg piece here so that it matches up with the other side. Alright, now that we've got the legs positioned, they seem alright, but I'm also going to want to rotate them a bit so that the legs here point downward a bit. Because, having it 45 degrees makes the leg piece stick out to about right here when the hip is up here. It just looks better this way if you, bend the leg a bit more. So I'm going to turn the rotate on. You just click rotate right here. This is where the rotation snap comes in. Now we click the angle that we're, we're going to click the spot that's going to be the axis of rotation, which is just this corner here. I'm going to rotate it by about 10 degrees downward, that way it lines up with it pretty well, and I'm going to do that to the other side here. You just press, well, to use Smart Zap, you press the E key on one of these little red points, whichever one you get close to. Pressing E will snap you right to it. Then you just click with left click, and then you rotate it by moving the mouse a little bit, and then you click again when you're done. And there we go. Next up, I'm going to put some feet onto this thing. I'm just going to use these little cubes right here. And I'm going to put the center of this cube, I still have rotation on, make sure you go back to move. Alright. I'm going to put the center of this to the center bottom of the leg pieces here, and then I'm going to push it 2 times to get it to the center. I'm just going to move it over to the other side here. Alright, now we got feet on this thing and everything else in place. Alright, so next I'm going to constrain the leg pieces here. Actually, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Alright, so this piece here, this isn't actually the hip of the mech. This is just a detail prop. It's just for decoration. It's entirely irrelevant. You don't need it at all. It just helps a lot if you're actually placing the blocks here. You could just have put these blocks to right here and it'd be fine, but I like the looks of this more. It's just, that's all it is. So what you do with something like that is you just parent it onto it. So parenting, it's a system in which you make one prop essentially be it functions as if it were a piece of this prop. So there's no physics that it would be in the prop that gets parented. It just snaps onto it. So to parent stuff correctly, you're going to have to spawn a gate. Now if you look at the gate tool, you'll see the option for no collide and the option for parent. You're going to want to check the parent button and the no collide button. And then here I have you can't see this model picture here, but it's the smallest gate option. You don't need to use the smallest one. I just use it because it looks nice if you're building some bigger contraptions. Now you can also see there's a bunch of folders up here. It doesn't actually matter at all which one you pick. So you can just click on this thing and pick the first thing. It doesn't matter. It only matters if you're actually using wire mod with gates and all that stuff, but for parenting, there's just no reason. Okay, so I'm just going to put this gate onto the, the hip plate right here. And that gets parented and no collided to that plate. Now, we're going to get the parenting tool, multi-parent. And once again, we want no collide checked. You do not check remove constraints. Do not check weld, disable collision, set weight, or disable shadows. Only no collide. I'm going to click on this one piece here, and then you right click on the gate. Now this parents this piece to this, and it should work fine. Alright, next up, we're going to just constrain the foot here to the lower leg. That's the easiest part of building a leg. With this, you just use axis center. It's just a piece here. Now, with axis center, the main thing that matters is where this the plane that you click on. Like, if you clicked here and then here, then it would rotate around this way. But if you click here, or actually anywhere on this side of it, as long as it's this prop, like I'll click here, then it'll spin properly as if it was at the center of it. I use this tool a lot because it's really easy for situations where you can't just get to this part real fast, and it also acts from the center of it, so if you're using a normal axis, it'd be off a bit. So you click on this prop first here, and then you just click on the hip. It doesn't matter at all where you click on the hip, you just gotta make sure you click on the side of this first, then hip anywhere. Alright, next up we get to the more complicated part. We're going to use the ball socket advanced tool. Now this one you have to actually set the minimum and maximums for things, and that's where it gets a little difficult because on different mechs you'll have different minimum and maximum sets for the middle leg joint here, and on each one it's just how far you can rotate in one direction, how far you can rotate in another. On stuff with a humanoid leg it'd be 0 in one direction and then like more than 90 in the other, probably something like 140. But with mechs like this, you also have rotation that goes backwards a bit and rotation that goes forward a bit. Now if you remember, I put this at 45 degrees originally, then moved it by 10 degrees. Now if we're talking about a 90-degree angle, this leaves us with 35 degrees of rotation that it goes backwards before it is a complete 180. And basically that just means that one of these values you only need 35 degrees, and I think it's the maximum. Now on this side it'll go up to about here so that we can crouch really well, so I'm just going to put it at like 150. After I put this constraint, I'm actually going to check to see if it actually was the correct ones. Alright, to check to see if this was correct, I'm going to open up the Advanced Duplicator tool. I'm just going to area select it. To area select, you hold the Shift key and then right click. Oh, you hold the Shift key, right click, and that opens it, and then you just right click again after you let loose of the Shift key, and then you get the copy of the Mech. Just left click to copy it. Okay, so I'm going to unfreeze this part here, and as we can see, the leg is able to rotate up this far and this far back. Now this allowed it to go back to the full 90 degrees rotation here, but I forgot to calculate in the amount of angle that lets it move so that this angle is straight. So that seems to be 45 degrees this way, so I need to add 45 degrees more to it. So that'd be 35 plus 45 would be 75. I press the R key while having the advanced ball socket tool out, and that will remove the previous constraint. Now I just replace it, and if our math was correct, this should be the proper amount of rotation that you need. I'm going to first put the upper to hip constraint before I test it again. Now for the upper to a hip constraint, you're going to need rotation in both ways that goes pretty far. So I'm just going to put 170 as a maximum and then negative 170 as the minimum. Now I should also explain that for the minimum and maximum for the Y and Z, that must be 0.1 and negative 0.1. If it's higher than that, you'll move to the side a bit, and if it's too low, it'll break. It just, you can't have the limit being 0 or something like that. It just won't work. The piece will just disappear, break off, or your game will crash, something like that. Just don't do it. Alright. Oh, also, don't set the force limit or torque limit up past 0. It just, it makes it break apart under certain circumstances. Alright, now that we got the constraint set up how we want to do it, you're just going to click on the rotation axis point here, which will be right here, the middle point here, that would move around. And then on this, you're going to click the side of the hip right here. Then we do that for the same on the other side, and that's it. That should be it for the all of the constraints on this, but one thing we need to do next is that we should set a free movement ball socket here that will be from the bottom of the foot to the hip. This will cause the foot to only have limited rotation so that it won't just start spinning around in circles. This way you don't just step on the top of your foot or anything like that. You're going to set this to negative 15 to positive 15 on the X. Make sure you have free movement checked. Just click on the bottom of this plate here, or this block I mean, and then the hip. It doesn't actually matter where you press on the hip, I just like pressing the bottom of it. Alright, there we go. Now next up, we're going to, also you should probably uncheck free movement after you're done with it. I've gone over many times where I accidentally use free movement constraints on parts and it just messes up everything. Alright. Next up, we're going to no collide the pieces here so that they aren't hitting each other. You want to no collide foot to the lower leg to the upper leg, and then you want to no collide the upper leg to the hip, and you also want to no collide the lower leg to the hip, because occasionally when you're moving, the lower leg will hit the top of the hip there. Now make sure you do this on the other side too, and we should be good. Alright. Next up, we're going to have to do weights. Weights are in kilograms in Garry's Mod, from what everybody understands so far. you're going to want to set the weights up at a pretty decent level. I'm going to say 500 kilograms. 500 kilograms is the standard. It works pretty well on everything. Now, for the feet, you're going to want 500 on each of those. And then the torso, you're going to want, well, not the torso, the hip, you're going to want 500. That should be good for that. With the leg pieces, 100 kilograms works very well. I've tested 500 before, but if you're using jump jets or something like that, it'll get unstable if it's in midair. So just keep that at 100. And this piece here, it doesn't matter at all what the weight actually is. I'm just going to set it to a very high amount right now so that our mech will not move super fast when we use it. So 25,000 tons. Well, 25,000 kilograms, I mean. Alright, so this should work. I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to save it. Just click on the Advanced Dupe 2 folder, right-click, save, and then type a file name. I'm going to name it Tutorial Mech. As you can see, I got a bunch of stuff in here, so it should be around the bottom here. Actually, no, it's right. It's somewhere. I'll check it later. But to open up a one, you just right-click and press open. That should do that. But now I'm going to test out the mech. And it seems I forgot to do one important thing. But I can't remember what. So I'm going to check what actually went wrong. We can use the Constraint information tool here and just click on the piece. So there's an axis right here that goes to this, and there's a no collide that goes to here. Let me right click on this. You know, I cannot actually tell what happened. But it seems like it's stuck in place. You know, if Gary's Mod occasionally gets some weird issues like this, the best thing to do is usually just undo some of the constraints you've put on it. I'm going to undo the axis center constraints here, and then just replace them. I messed up on that one just there. Alright, let's see. Now it works properly, but since I moved it before I saved it, I should not save a duplication that's been unfrozen. If you do, that will cause stability issues in future duplications of that. But while we're here, let's test the movement. The movement seems to function properly. You can move back pretty far, and you can move up really far. Alright, so now on the working copy here that we haven't unfroze, I'm just going to undo the axes on the left feet, and then redo them so that they should work properly. Now I'll copy and save this version of it. Alright, so now we have our working mech. Well, it's not working yet, but we have a working skeleton of a mech. And next we're going to have to put on the wiring and the entities that will actually let it move and keep it standing. So for that, we're going to use, DakTek here. I'm going to get the gyroscope and the reactor set up. So as I saw before, as we did previously, I set this to 25 tons. So that means that a micro reactor doesn't actually have the power to move it. So I'm going to move up to a small reactor. That should give me a maximum weight of 40 tons. You can read that right there, the weight limit. Each of them have a different weight limit that goes up as the engine gets bigger. But I'm just going to use a small XL engine. And I'm going to place this on to the back of the mech. I'm going to use precision here to get it all lined up. And just line that up with the center line. If you can see here, the center line is a bit wider than the rest of them. And as you can see, I actually put it sideways. And I don't want it sideways. So as you can see, the prop is also put here sideways. Well, in a darker color. You just rotate that to where you want it to be, and then click again, and there it goes. It should be set up. Next up, I'm going to put the gyroscope on. I'm going to get a light gyro here. Alright, one important thing we need to always do is you gotta get the precision alignment tool, right click on the gyroscope, then press R. This will bring up the menu here for the precision alignment tool. Click on the rotation tab and then get angles. As you can see, the angle of this is about 90 degrees, close enough, it rounds to it. And on the hip right here, we get angles, and it's also 90 degrees. It must be the same angle as what the gyroscope is. If it is not the same angle, it will not work properly. The mech will just spaz out and won't work at all. So if you actually do have one that has the wrong angles here, just make sure it just get angles from this. Right click, make sure it's blue. Press R again, press rotate entity, and it'll make it the same angles as the gyroscope here. Alright, since that's already right for us, we're just going to move the gyroscope into place. I'm just going to move it here using the precision tool, put it up near the front, make sure that arrow is pointing forward, and we're good. Alright, next up we're going to need a seat and a pod controller. I'm going to put the seat on to the front of this. Alright, now with seats, if you go and try and press E while looking at it, you'll just get into the vehicle. So I'm going to move it with precision alignment. With precision alignment, I can just, click on mass center here, and then click on it once. This puts a point on it right here, you can see that. And then just right click on it, it'll turn it blue. And that means it's selected as the main thing that we're going to move. Now, I'm going to put this hit point here. I move to hit point, and then select point 2. I pressed E right here on the center of this, and then click. This puts a second point here. Now, I'm going to move this seat to right there by that point here. This one's already selected, so right click on that. I press point 1, and then I move it to point 2. Then I press move entity. And as you can see, that moved it to right here. And that's exactly what I wanted to do, but as you can see, it clips through the plate, clips through the gyroscope right there. So I'm going to get the precision tool, and I just right click on the back of this so it moves forward a bit. And now our seat's perfectly lined up in the center and isn't stuck through this, so it should work out just fine. Next up, I'm going to parent on these pieces here. You always want to parent this stuff to the gate right there, or else you'll have really weird weight issues on the mech, and generally it just won't actually work. If you don't have a parented gate and you don't parent the gyro, it'll just actually put errors out. Don't do that. Please don't do that. So you just click on all these just one time. It turns all of them green. You can click multiple props at once. And then just right click on the gate. And there we go. Also, with the movement and no clip, if you haven't figured it out yet, you can press shift to move really fast, and more importantly, you can press control and hold that to move really slow. That's good for if you're doing detailed work, which I do a lot of. And I have the zoom button on my mouse just so I can zoom in and show people stuff. You don't really need it though. Alright, we're going to go to the wire tab right here. You don't really need to do too much in wire for this, but it's just a little bit required. We're going to get the pod controller right here. You select that. Any model works. Now I just put this pod controller onto the plate somewhere. Left click. And now we've got to link it to the chair. Right click on this, then right click on the chair. And now it's linked up. Okay, now we get the wiring tool out. And this is where we actually got to wire up different pieces here. So we're going to press the forward button to the W key, reverse to the S key, left to A, and right to D. It's like going to the settings menu and just setting it all up. Alright, activate should be set up to active on the pod controller here. That means it'll turn on whenever you sit down in the seat. I'm going to set sprint to be the shift key, and crouch I'll set that to control. Well, control is actually called third person in the pod controller. It's an option you can actually toggle, so if you click, crouch to that, you won't actually have to hold it. So I'm going to set it to third person. Jump jets, I'm going to put that on to space. This mech doesn't have jump jets yet, but I'll put some on later. Lamb toggle you don't need to use. That's only for, you know, a real advanced building. If you're building a mech that can transform into, like, you know, aircraft halfway. It's some real weird stuff. Just don't use it. I added it in for one guy one time, you know, with anime and all that. Yeah, it was that kind of deal. Yeah, but yeah, I'm just gonna wire up the rest of this. Okay, so hip goes to the hip plate here, and left foot goes to the left foot, and right foot goes to the right foot. Okay, next we're gonna actually need some hitboxes on this for the left and right leg, so I'm gonna set those up. We go to the spawner menu here, and hitbox controller should be right here under the utilities tab. We're going to spawn 2 of them, just left click and it'll spawn them. Okay, so we're going to put these onto the mech. I'm going to put them, just angle them upright. And, you know, just to keep it looking pretty, I'm going to actually move them with some precision here, and just show you how to use precision a bit more. So, hit point, and another hit point. This is 1 and 2. Next up, I'm going to get point 3 and click mass center on this, right click it, have point 2 selected and point 3 being the one that it goes from, point 1 being 2, you just move entity, and now on this one I click point 3, right click and select it, and then move it to point 2. And this moves both of them just perfectly in line with this plate here. I just delete all of it after I'm done with it so it doesn't clutter up. Okay, next up I parent both of these to the gate right here, and that should be it for the hitbox controllers, you know, putting them up there. But next we actually got to fill the health pools. So we get the health pooler tool, and you select all the props that go into the health pooler. So you'd select the foot, the lower leg, and the upper leg, and then you just, you know, so left click, and then you right click on the hitbox controller for that side, and that pulls it up. You'll see some sparking from the engine as it recalculates the hitboxes. Alright, next we do that to the other side, right click on that, and it should be ready to go for the hitboxes. Now if you right click, well not right click, get the spawner tool out, then press R, you'll see that, well, if you press R you'll see the weight of the mech, but if you press right click, you'll get the health of it, which is 35 health for this whole leg, 35 for that one. Okay, so next up we just wire up that one part that we needed here. So left leg hitbox goes to the left leg hitbox controller. Right leg goes to the right leg hitbox controller, and that's all we got to do for the gyroscope. Alright. Next up, we have to link the gyroscope to the reactor. You just get the linker tool, it's pretty simple. Just left click, right click. That's it. A lot of different entities have to be linked in. Ammo doesn't and heat sinks don't, but mostly everything else should be. So you just, as I said before, left click, right click, and that'll link it in. Alright, I'm going to copy this, I'm going to save it. Let's spawn it over here and see what I messed up on. Okay, it's standing up. There's no sliding. If the mech is sliding, that means that your constraints are not, you know, they're too restrictive. So that means that the mech will slide in a certain direction. Some sliding to the left or right, just really small amounts, that's just gonna happen. You can't help that. Okay, so if we hold the C key, then right click on the gyroscope, we can press edit properties. This will let us change some stuff on our mech. So we can increase the crouch percentage. This increases how far you can crouch down. I suggest just increasing it until your mech starts sliding backwards. But my mech actually has enough freedom of rotation on the legs that it can go to maximum without sliding. Some mechs won't have that amount. I'm just going to put it to about, I'll put it at max, that way we can get in it while we're on the ground. Okay, extra height allows you to set up how much extra height your mech has, but going too much can cause your mech to slide. It's mostly only useful under certain mechs. Okay, jump forward bias, if we have jump jets, that's how much forward we go. Well, how forward we go. If you're at 0%, you'll only go up. You can go all the way up to 50%. That'll make half of it go forward and half of it go up. It's really good for if you want a lot of mobility. Okay, so we also have walk, stride length, height, and the hip the bob multiplier. That increases the length and height of our strides, but to see that we'll actually have to drive the mech. So we get into it, and I realized that my third person key here is also the key for crouching, and if we're crouched we can't walk. So what we're going to need is a camera chip that allows us to see in third person without using those third person commands. I'll link this in the description, but also you should check out the DakTek Steam group. I have all of the E2 chips that I use on the same Steam group page. They're all on the front page. You also get more information on updates and other stuff if you join up on the site, from announcements and all that, maybe even events. Alright, now that that's loaded up, we're going to look up camera chip, and it has no space in it. Alright, so for the camera chip we just place one of those onto the hip, and we gotta wire that up. Now there's actually instructions in the chip if you... oh yeah, I haven't explained the wire tool yet, well the expression tool yet. So what you do with this is that you open up the tool and you have a list of E2 chips that you've acquired, coded, downloaded, whatever, and these go in a certain folder. But you can also just copy the text from a source that you got it from, and then if you right click you'll open up the menu here. Now if you had a bunch of text, like I'm just gonna cut this text out here with Control X. Now if you have an empty E2 chip here, it'll start with some words and just delete all that. Press Control V, you'll paste it into the editor here. Sometimes this is a really long code and not all of it will post, so watch out. Alright, with this camera chip it comes with the instructions inside of the chip, so it tells you what to do with the camera control chip and the camera controller itself and all that stuff. I'm going to explain it to you myself, but if you ever forget, it's in the chip right here. Alright, so as we said before, just put the chip down right there, and we're going to need a cam controller. Okay, so I look for that right here. You can just press search right here. Camera, actually it's called cam controller. Okay, so we open that up, and as you can see there's a lot of settings right here. You only need to check client side movement and draw parent, that works best. And also for best results, set the smooth speed to 4. If you set it up really high you'll sometimes get a bunch of spazzing, so set it to 4 and it should be good. Also any model is fine. Okay, so I'm just going to put this onto the hip right here, and then we got to link it. Right click and then right click again and it's linked to the seat. Alright, now we gotta wire it. We're gonna link the pod right here. This goes to the pod controller. Camera controller goes to the cam controller. And scope, that is our zoom key. I'm gonna link that to the light button, which is F on the keyboard. Well, at least it's F for me. I think it should be for everybody actually. It doesn't change if you change it in controls. And cam toggle, I'll set that to be the Alt key. And then the only thing we need to wire on the cam controller is FOV, which is field of view. Then we just wire that to the output, which is zoom. That'll allow us to actually zoom in. So if I sit in the seat here, as you can see, we're right here. And if I press Alt, we're in third person. If I press F, we've zoomed in. Alright. So our camera's all working right now, and it's all set up. I'm going to copy that. Just going to save it. It's always a good idea to save off, and Gary's mod can be unstable sometimes, and if you're on multiplayer you never know when somebody's just going to crash the server, so it's a good idea to save up. Alright, so spawn the mech, right click, and we just get into it. Press Alt. Now we're in third person here, and we can see our mech try and move here. Seems to be working pretty well. A little shaky. So we're gonna check our, little walk stride length and all that, so we can tune it up to our likings here. So I just go into third person again, and I can see that the stride length is a bit high, so I'm going to whoops, that's increasing it. Whoops, too low. Okay, so I'm just going to actually increase the stride length a bit here. So now we take really long strides here. And then I'm going to decrease the stride height a bit. That way we're no longer going up too high when we walk. And then I'm going to increase the bob multiplier so that when we walk it looks more like we're stomping a bit. Oh, don't go too high though. Okay, so about 0.6 will seem safe. And then I just set it for the same values for sprint. You can set it a little different if you want the sprint to look a bit different. Oh yeah, for best tuning, just click on the name of it and then slide it a bit and you get real precise numbers here. Alright, I'm going to set the crouch percent back up to maximum. And let's try running with this. Running is the shift key. And as you can see, we should be moving a bit faster. Doesn't really look like we're going all too much faster though. But we are. You can notice it a little bit. This mech doesn't move too fast though. Using a small gyroscope, and I have it pretty heavy. Oh, what's this? Okay, let's not set the hip bob multiplier up on this one too high. That's usually best for heavier mechs. You know, you might not need it. 0 is a pretty good number, and it requires a lot of tuning if you want it just set up perfectly. But if you're a perfectionist, you can go in and set it up just how you like. But for everybody else, you know, the default 0 is pretty much perfect. Okay, so let's remember that it's 1.4 and 0.5 for the strides right there. So I'm just going to delete that. Then back on the working copy. I don't need the working copy anymore. We're going to actually have to just clean that up and spawn a second copy that we're going to work from. This allows the gyroscope to update to the new settings here. So we're going to set that up. You can also just type it in. That works real well. So that was 0.4, 0.5, I think it was 0.5. Watch me get that wrong, I'll see it when I see the recording. 5, and crouch percentage, 50. And I'm going to set the jump forward bias to, you know, full 50%. Gotta get that speed. Okay, check to see if everything went right. Yep. Alright, so next I'm going to put some jump jets on this mech so we can fly around and stuff. Alright, go to mobility, jump jets. Jump jets only work on mechs, so yeah. Okay, so with jump jets, the more weight you have in jump jets, the more fuel you'll get. I'm going to use 2 tons worth of jump jets on a mech that's currently about 30 tons. So I should fly around pretty well, but I won't go and, you know, hit space or anything. It doesn't matter where these are placed, but I just like having them in a good looking spot because they do output some smoke. Alright. Just positioning these how I want. Okay, next we just parent those on to the hip, and we should be good to go. If I respawn this, spawn it again. Okay, I don't have a HUD set up just yet, I'll set that up later, but there's a jump fuel value, and as it goes up, we'll be able to fly. So, here's me pressing spacebar, and we've made it into air. Bit of shake on the landing there, and we're coming right back down. A little slow. Okay, so next up we're gonna want to you know, get a hip. Well, we have the hip. We're gonna need a torso and, you know, the HUD set up. I'm just gonna go over the full thing in this video just so, you know, everybody will know how to use it in just one video. Okay, next up, the torso should be the same size as the hip. You really don't want to make it any bigger. It can be smaller though. Just don't make it too big. Actually, keep it at the same size as the hip. That's a good rule. Okay, so for this, so that I can get this precision aligned and all that, I'm going to click on the mass center of this because right now the upper part right here is blocked by this gate here, so I'm just going to press mass center on this, and then on this plate here I'm going to press hit position on the bottom and then move it to 0.1. Now as you can see, this puts this one higher up than this one. Next up I'm going to set this to about 1000% and just pull it up. And there we go, we got a torso plate. Next up, we should probably unparent the seat and move it to where the torso would be. So I'm just going to set that to 100 push and push it up a bit. So now we got that set up in the torso, but we're going to need to parent it onto it. So as usual, just get the gate, put it right there. Doesn't matter where you put it, I just like putting it at the center. Parent it on to the gate right here, and now we have the torso piece. But it needs to have some constraints. So we use the ball socket center tool and set the minimum and maximum rotation to -180 and 180 in all directions here, as you can see. Just click on the hip, well, the torso, then the hip, and there you go, you have a hip, well, a torso plate. I just keep messing up. Alright, next up we need the torso chip. This is also found on the DakTek group page. Alright, make sure I name this one right. Yep, just should be torso chip. Now, as you can see, this one right here isn't actually the torso chip I need because, you know, I have a whole bunch of code because I make all these myself, and sometimes I change the ones that work. So I'm just going to get a different mech and copy the torso chip off of that. The ones that you find on the chips that you find on the group page should be the most up-to-date ones, but you know, I might not always have the one set up myself. So be sure you're always getting the most up-to-date when you're using it. I'm just going to spawn this mech here and go into the hip, find the torso chip, and as you can see it's actually named something different than what I was looking up, and that's why I didn't find it. Okay. So now this chip also has its own instructions. You got to make sure it points forward and it should be welded to the hip. Those are the main things here. Okay, so we put it onto the hip. Now next up we got to freeze this. So you click on it and then right click on it. That freezes it right there. And we're going to undo the weld on it, because when you place a chip down it automatically welds. So just select the weld tool, right click on it. Next up, go to the precision alignment tool, right click on it again, press R. You got to get the angles of it. It's at 0 right now, but it should be at 90 like the hip and gyro. Okay, so we set that to 90, then we weld it back to the hip. And then we also parent it to the hip itself. Don't parent it to the gate itself because it is a E2 chip itself, so you don't need to actually wire it to a gate. So just right click directly on the base plate. Okay, so now that we got the torso chip here, we actually got to link it up. Torso entity is this piece up here. The pod is this one right here, and the camera is this one here. Now, this thing that says did, you don't need to use that anymore. That was something from if you use the actual chip instead of a gyroscope, you don't really need it. Okay, next up, that should move properly now, and I should be able to test that. So I'm just going to save this one right here, and I'm going to place it down. As you can see, we have this torso, and it turns properly when we move it. But if we look up and down, it's actually rolling side to side. So the chip actually has options to fix this. You just open up the torso chip, and as you can see, there's swap, roll, and pitch. Roll is if you're moving side to side, and pitch is if you're up and down. I was looking up and down, and it turned me side to side, so I set that to 1, and it should swap it so it works properly for us. Now to test it again, and if I look up it goes down, and if I look down it goes up, but we are actually pitching instead of rolling. So next we go into it again and select the flip pitch option. Okay, now if we look down, we are looking down, and if we look up, we're looking up. So everything's working just fine. Now make sure we copy the settings of the one from right there into the one that we're working on. Now that should work properly. Okay, next up, we probably need a gun on this. So I'm going to go into the browser right here, and then click on Games, then All. I'm going to look into the DAC folder. This will load up a list of all the models from DakTek, quite a many of them. I'm going to click the 025 laser. This is one of the smallest laser, I think. Yeah, it's the smallest laser in the DakTek, so it's a really good model for using as a base hardpoint for putting more guns on, because you always want to parent guns in DakTek because they're very heavy, and parenting just removes that weight from the equation there. Okay, so it's almost like we're setting up a second torso, but it's attached to the torso itself. You want to point this forward like the rest of this, and this ball socket center, this piece here, to the torso. Next up, we're going to need a gun chip. I think it's called Mech Gun Stuff. Okay. So, this one also has its own instructions inside as usual. You just place it on the prop the gun is ball socket to, which should be our torso, and then we make sure that the arrow on the ship is pointing forward. Now it also has some little things we can edit right here, such as the rotation speed, the elevation, depression, and the minimum and maximum yaw that it has. I'm going to leave it at 45 for all of these. Okay, so we place this onto it, and just like we did with the torso chip, we freeze it, we remove the weld, rotate it, and weld it right back on, and then just parent it to this piece here. Now we're all good. Okay, so now we're going to actually set up the hardpoint to be linked to this. Just wire gun to the hardpoint, and then pod to the pod controller, and camera to the cam controller. Okay, next up we're going to need a gate that goes to the gun right here. And there we go. Okay, next up we're going to want a gun, so I'm just going to get ourselves a little laser on this one. Let's see, medium laser sounds fine. Just pick that up, rotate it how we need it, and then precision alignment. You want to get the mass center of this to the mass center of this and make sure that's equal. You can move the gun forward and back as much as you want. You can even put multiple guns on it. In fact, I'll do that now. So we'll have two medium lasers on this one hard point. But as you can see, they're both inside of each other here, so we're going to move this with the precision tool. I'm going to put it at 50%, push one. Well, it actually moved it sideways a bit, so we're going to put it on from the side here, because the precision tool, it matters a lot where you press it. So if you press something like this, you can't see it, but the hitbox itself angles a bit from this part. It goes based off of the physics, so we're going to actually click right here, where it's completely flat. And there we go, we have two guns right here, side by side. Now we just parent both of those guns to the chip right here. Now, if you had a chip that was underneath of it, you'd use the fading door tool, and you'd set the numpad up here, or fading door or whatever, and you'd click on the gun itself, and then you'd be able to click whatever button you set here as the fade option. I don't need one now for this because, as you can see, it's right there in the open. Now, if you actually have a hard point here, normally you don't want those being seen. It doesn't matter much if they are because they'll be in the correct hitboxes. I'll do hitbox tutorial next so that everybody knows how to do those, but for now I'm just going to set this thing to be invisible. So you're going to set the color to clear. And then I'll do the same with this thing here. Alright, So now we got our 2 lasers here, and you can't see the little turret that's on it. I'm going to set the fire button on both of them to be mouse 1. Okay, next we should link the guns to the reactor. Left click, right click, left click, right click. And there we go. We can get inside this. And mouse 1. And there we go. Lasers fire. Okay, let's test this out. Save it up. And spawn it again. What's going on with this? Well, when in doubt, just spawn it again. And when that doesn't work, you just go ahead and click the laser. And now it's back up to date. Copy it. Spawn it again. Weird bugs happen every once in a while. You never know what really causes them, but in this case, this one caused the laser to become unwired. And it also seemed to cause it to become unlinked. Okay, so we just redo that, copy it again, and as you can see, it's working normally now. Let me unfreeze this one here so we have something to shoot at. Okay, so now we're walking around, we have our turret, it aims at where we look, and we can just go ahead and shoot at whatever this is, and it takes, you know, small amounts of damage. You know, the medium lasers, they aren't super damaging. Right now I'm just going to take out this gyroscope. Lots of sparks and all that. And if we take out the gyroscope, we can see the mech stops moving. Okay, so next up we're going to get the HUD and you know, the hitbox. You want to get the hitbox set up before the HUD, actually, because the HUD, you know, requires the hitbox. And we're also going to do radars and all that stuff too. But this tutorial seems like it's long enough right now. This seems like a good cutoff point, so I'll do that in the next videos. Alright, I'd also just like to remind everybody that I do have a Patreon account set up if you are interested in donating, if you like the mod, or if you like the tutorials even. I'll leave a link in the description below. Alright, tune in next time for, you know, hitboxes. That's what we'll do. Alright, bye.